sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Okay, so get this. The headline we're diving into today is Mississippi Democrat launches Contraception Begins at Erection Act.
Wow. Yeah.
Honestly, where do we even with a title like that?
It is pretty attention-grabbing, isn't it?
It is.
I think that's the point, though.
Okay.
This Newsweek article, it's from January 23rd, 2025, and it kind of takes us past that shock value, you know?
Yeah.
To explore what this law is all about.
So we're not just like doing legal analysis. We're going full-on deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to figure out the motivation behind it, the reactions to it, and like what it says about reproductive rights.
Exactly. Like, what does this tell us about, bodily autonomy, gender roles, all of that?
Okay, before we get into all of that, like the really complex stuff, let's just what is this Contraception Begins at Erection Act all about?
Okay, so basically the bill, it wants to make it unlawful for a person to discharge genetic material without the intent to fertilize an embryo.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Sounds pretty broad, right?
Yeah, like kind of dystopia.
Yeah, it does.
But the article, it mentions some exceptions.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You can still donate genetic material.
Okay.
You can also sell it for future fertilization procedures.
Right.
And really importantly, using contraceptives, that's totally fine.
Okay, so this isn't about every time.
Right.
But even with those exceptions, how would this even be enforced?
Yeah.
It seems like a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, it really does. A lot of critics of the bill, that's the first thing they bring up. How do you even keep track of this, right? It's just so much invasion of privacy too. Potentially.
So if it's not really about actually being a law that can be enforced, what's the goal?
Right.
Is this just some big political stunt?
Well, that's what's interesting. So the guy who is sponsoring this bill, Mississippi State Senator Bradford Blackmon, he says it's not just about getting attention.
Okay.
His argument is that this bill is meant to show how there's a double standard.
Double standard.
Yeah, when it comes to how we think about reproductive rights.
I mean,
so he's saying that men just aren't held to the same standards, really, when it comes to reproductive choices, especially after Roe v. Wade was overturned.
So he's trying to be this is ridiculous. Look how ridiculous this is.
Exactly.
And by the way, you're already doing something similar to women.
Yeah, he's using satire, basically.
Oh, interesting.
To get people talking, to make them think.
Yeah, would this be acceptable if it were applied to men?
Right, exactly.
And if not, then why is it okay for women?
That's his point.
Wow. Okay. The article mentions that Senator Blackmon is actually pretty young to be pushing for such a controversial bill.
Yeah, he's only 34.
He's a Democrat representing Mississippi's 21st district. But he's already done so much. He's on all these committees.
Yeah, he's on the Medicaid committee, the Judiciary Committee, the Insurance Committee.
Wow.
And even Public Property and Technology. What?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
He's a busy guy.
So he's not afraid of controversy, is what you're saying.
It seems not. I mean, look at his record.
Yeah.
He's sponsored all sorts of bills, ones about non-economic damages,
Like the part of lawsuits that deals with emotional distress and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then he also has these guidelines for how law enforcement can use tasers.
Interesting. Well, this Contraception Begins at Erection Act, that's certainly a challenge, right?
Definitely.
It's provocative. People are talking about it. But is it effective?
Yeah. Is it just a headline or does it actually do something?
Right. Let's look at how people are reacting to it, because the article mentions that there are a lot of different opinions.
Yeah, a whole spectrum of interpretations. Some people love it, some hate it, some are just confused.
Okay, so Wendy Suarez, she's an anchor at KOKH Fox 25. She tweeted that she supports it. She's saying that men are half of the equation when it comes to making babies, right?
Right.
So they should also be held accountable for their choices.
Then there's Eric Erickson. He's more of a conservative commentator.
Yeah.
He was saying that the article is biased because it didn't mention Blackmon's party right away.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's Truth Matters. It's the social justice account. And they were kind of joking about how you would even enforce this law.
Yeah.
They even mentioned Elon Musk's Neuralink.
Oh, wow.
The brain implants. Would the government need those to,
keep track of everything?
Yeah.
It is kind of funny, but it also makes you think, right? Where's the line?
Yeah, how much control should the government have?
Exactly. And then there's the whole thing about personal freedom, what choices should people be allowed to make?
Right.
It's a big, messy debate.
Yeah. This bill is about so much more than what it, seems to be on the surface.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
This little window into these big cultural anxieties we have.
Exactly.
About, reproductive rights, freedom, the role of government, all of that.
To really get what this bill is all about, we need to look at Mississippi, after Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, that context is important.
Mississippi has been kind of at the center of the whole abortion debate, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, they have that trigger law, right?
Right.
It banned most abortions, right away after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
In July 2022.
Yeah.
So this new bill, it's being introduced in a place where getting an abortion is already basically impossible.
Yeah, that's true. And then nationwide, there's been this big increase in demand for contraceptives.
All right.
Like emergency contraception, abortion pills, all of that.
Because of Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Exactly.
So even though this bill might be more about making a point than actually, changing the law, the timing is really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's Mississippi, and it's right now when all of this is happening.
It makes you think about, who this bill actually affects.
Exactly. It's not just some abstract legal thing,
It's about real people.
Yeah, and especially people in marginalized communities.
Right.
It's already hard enough for them to get reproductive health care.
This is where it gets really serious.
It does.
Less about hypotheticals, more about what actually happens to people.
Exactly. And I think that's really important to remember as we keep going with this deep dive.
It feels like this bill just brings up all these big questions.
It does. It really shows how divided everyone is on this.
Right.
Some people, they're all about individual choice,
Yeah.
But then there are others who they have different priorities. Maybe their beliefs are based on religion or morality.
And this bill, it's it makes those two sides clash.
Totally. It's hey, are you really okay with this?
Yeah.
It forces everyone to really think about where they stand.
It's kind of like using humor to make a serious point.
Yeah.
Has that been done before, in politics?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Think about the suffragettes.
Oh, right.
They did all sorts of creative stuff to get attention.
Like what?
Well, they had these satirical cartoons.
Okay.
And plays even.
Wow.
And they'd have these protests with really clever signs and outfits.
So they were using humor to challenge the way things were.
Exactly. They knew that being witty and ironic, it could really get people talking.
So Senator Blackmon, he's kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, he's using this unconventional method to, shake things up a little.
Whether or not this law actually happens, he's gotten people's attention.
He has. And, maybe it's making some men think more about their own role in all of this.
Some people might say that this is making light of a serious issue.
Right. You can't just joke about reproductive rights.
Right. Exactly.
And yeah, satire can be tricky. Sometimes it works and sometimes it just makes people mad.
It depends on if they get the message, right?
Yeah. And if they're even willing to listen.
The article mentions that after this bill came out, more people started searching for stuff about vasectomies and male birth control.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's maybe this weird law actually got some guys thinking, maybe I should be more responsible.
Maybe. I mean, it's definitely made people more aware of those options.
The timing of this bill is kind of wild, too.
How so?
All these states are passing laws to make it harder to get an abortion.
Right.
And then this bill comes along, and it's all about, men taking responsibility.
Yeah, it's almost like a counter argument.
Right.
It's hey, it's not just about what women do.
Yeah.
We need to think about everyone's role in this.
Maybe this bill could be, a model for other states.
That's an interesting thought.
Even if this specific law doesn't happen, maybe it'll give other people ideas.
Yeah, maybe it'll inspire them to, challenge the way we think about these things.
This bill has gotten so much attention.
It really has.
People are talking about it. The media is covering it.
And it's making people, really confront these uncomfortable truths about, gender roles and who has power when it comes to reproduction.
Who knows if other states will try to do something similar? But it's definitely added something new to the conversation.
It has. And that conversation is super important right now.
After Roe v. Wade, everything's so uncertain.
It is.
People are worried about what's going to happen with reproductive health care.
It's we're in this completely new territory.
Yeah.
And the stakes are really high. this bill, in its own way, shows how urgent this is.
We need to find new ways to protect people's rights.
Yeah, and to expand them.
Make sure everyone has the right to make their own choices about their bodies.
Exactly. We can't just sit back and wait.
We need action. We need to talk about this.
And we need to make sure that everyone has the freedom to decide what happens to them.
It's about more than just like healthcare. It's about people's futures.
Exactly. It's about having control over your own life.
We've talked about so much, like the actual bill, and then like what it means for society.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important things for like our listener to remember from all of this?
Well, I think it's important to see that this bill, like, even if it doesn't become a law, it shows that things are changing.
Okay.
It's like people are getting frustrated with how we talk about reproductive rights.
Yeah.
It's always about women and what they can or can't do.
Right. Like it's their responsibility.
Exactly.
It's like this bill is saying, hold on, if we're going to make rules about bodies, those rules should apply to everyone.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Like, why is it okay to control women's bodies, but not men's?
Right. That's the hypocrisy that the bill is trying to point out.
And that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Yeah, it makes you think.
It's not just about like the legal stuff. It's about like how our society works.
It's about power, Who gets to make decisions about their own body?
And who doesn't?
Exactly.
We need to be talking about reproductive health care in a way that includes everyone.
Yeah, and not just focusing on one gender.
So what happens now? Like, what could this bill lead to, even if it doesn't actually become a law?
Well, it's hard to know for sure, but I think it could really change how we think about this stuff.
Okay.
Maybe more men will start paying attention.
Right, like realizing that this is their issue too.
Exactly, and then maybe they'll start pushing for laws that are more fair.
For everyone.
Yeah.
Could this, like, inspire other states to do something similar?
It's possible, yeah. Other lawmakers might see this and be like, hey, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's a way to challenge the way things are.
This bill has made a lot of people think.
It has, for sure.
It's gotten everyone talking, even people who usually don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to do something shocking, something funny to get people's attention.
It's true. Sometimes you got to shake things up a little bit.
Right.
Okay, so as we finish up this deep dive, what's like the big question you want our listener to think about?
Well, I think the fact that this bill is so controversial, that says something about us.
About how we talk about reproductive rights.
Exactly. Like, are we really having a good conversation about this?
Are we really listening to each other?
Or are we just stuck in the same old arguments?
That's a good question to think about.
It is, yeah, especially now, with everything changing so fast.
We need to figure out what reproductive rights are going to look like in the future.
And we need to make sure that everyone's included in that future.
That's a great place to end. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I